While an occupation doesn't guarantee you'll beat a related challenge or attribute of the game, it certainly helps. Cliff, a former basketballer, dominated the basketball challenge. Elizabeth, a former Olympic medalist, did great in swimming challenges. This video is instead dedicated to people who should have been able to crush portions of the game with their occupation, but failed horribly. On the topic of failing and falling, at number 5 we have Debbie from Survivor Game Changers. Now Debbie may remain the hidden 8th wonder of the world in the fact she seemingly claimed to possess every occupation known to mankind. However, one very important one was that she claimed she was a gymnast. Now, you'd be excused if you didn't believe her. After all, this was the same woman with simultaneous jobs in the water and chemist business that proceeded to drink mud water. On top of that, she also proved to not be flexible at all, a trait heavily associated with gymnastics when met with the stick crawl challenge in episode 2. But there will be skeptics saying that's not a good enough example, so let's move into episode 4 involving a balance beam. A dream portion of the challenge for an individual who was a gymnast. We get to the before challenge discussion, which is rare, letting you know something is about to go down. Foreshadowing. But Debbie is adamant about doing the beam, which Brad, taking the leader position, is obviously fine with. So the challenge begins fine, as Haley does pretty average on the balance beam, and Ty's quick digging secures them a lead coming into the second part of the challenge beam. This is when Debbie happens. To make a long story short, Debbie stumbles, falls, and drops the ball physically as well as metaphorically. On some occasions, she can't even put one foot on the beam before stumbling off. This is a better attempt at her looking drunk than at the merge. Debbie completely fumbles the lead and only completes the balance beam after everyone's already won the challenge. But of course, Debbie couldn't just admit to making the wrong call and perhaps not being as good of a gymnast as she thought. She rattled off excuse after excuse. It was all Haley's fault. Oh, and the balance beam was too slippy. But on top of that, Debbie also felt the need to call out Brad, supposedly making the tribe a dictatorship. And, in one of the most hilarious editing moments in the show, we get a flashback from the editors calling out Debbie, wanting to do the challenge. Debbie proves to be a massive hypocrite in this scene, and her inability to cross a balance beam puts her gymnastics into question. As summarised by one of my commenters, she has every job in the world and is probably from the 4th dimension, but she sucked at challenges. Balancing into number 4, we have fellow co-wrong contestant Darnell, also known during the premiere as Brown Trout. Much like a trout, Darnell was extremely experienced in the water, as he was an ex-lifeguard, and even stated the skills gained from this career would help him survive Survivor. So when it was announced a good portion of the first immunity challenge involved swimming to a boat and diving for some buoys, this should have been incredible news for Darnell. So, before the challenge, Darnell obviously takes the responsibility of being the hero in the dive section. And I don't know about you, but I'm convinced when he arrives, he'll do an amazing job. Any second now. He's just biding his time. Darnell, you busy pooping again? In reality, despite being a former lifeguard, Darnell practically had the challenge performance of someone who thought they were about to be waterboarded. He was slow to get to the boat, had to be helped onto the boat by his tribe mates, and even then almost tipped the boat, which would cause them all to capsize. But Darnell still had the opportunity to redeem himself when the diving portion of the challenge began. All he had to do was not mess up, and definitely not lose the snorkel. Well, that went swimmingly. Now, Darnell had wasted time swimming, tried to reenact the Titanic, and now had lost the snorkel for his tribe in the space of a minute. I genuinely don't think you could have done a better job than this if you were actually planning to throw the challenge. Worst of all is after failing to get the buoy, Darnell rises from the water, telling his tribe mates he lost the snorkel, and then, like a wild abra, immediately flees. This causes Jenny, the non-lifeguard, with no snorkel, running on about 30 seconds of sleep, to do Darnell's job faster than he ever could, as she dislodged the buoys. Ultimately, perhaps one of the worst impressions you could give to your tribe, and explains why he was eventually the first sent home. On the topic of housing, at number 3 we have the episode 4 building reward challenge in Survivor Palau. Now, Oolong at this stage had lost every immunity challenge, leaving them with 6, and even though this was only a reward challenge, at stake was a new shelter, newly created by professional builders, which was a massive advantage over the other tribe. The challenge itself required each tribe to build a toilet and a shower area, with Jesse, the main designer of Survivor production, picking a winner. Finally, Oolong seemed to have something in their wheelhouse, as James had an occupation in construction. More specifically, he was a steel worker, even stating on the show, he builds houses. Dare I say it, this was almost unfair to the opposing Karud tribe. This was like putting 6 babies in a math contest against Einstein. However, something important to note is that James Miller, on the show, was literally wrong about everything possible. This is the same man that said Oolong was a damn fine tribe. You know, Oolong, the worst performing tribe in Survivor history. This man shouldn't be on Survivor. He should be in a lab having his genetics tested on how he can be so confidently wrong about everything conceivable. Nonetheless, James gets to work, picking the appropriate tools, and even in spite of the tribe's issues, he divided up the rules appropriately, allowing for the bathrooms to be built in a timely fashion. What's that, James? You want to say something? Sure, go ahead, buddy.
I think we won. No doubt.
You idiot. When James announces he knows his tribe won, immediately, within a millisecond of him finishing his sentence, you know Oolong lost. Despite the edit trying its best, on the rewatch you can tell Karud had put more effort into their decoration and had the better support for their buildings. I mean, Jesse merely tugs on the bathroom wall on Oolong's beach and it begins shaking, on top of the palm fronds being too low, leading to a lack of privacy, and James admits in one of the main attractions the toothbrushes aren't even used by him. It's a complete catastrophe for such an esteemed construction worker like James to lose the building challenge, and so he ranks here. Storming into number 2 is Kelly Wigglesworth, the river guide, losing the rowing challenge to a man that can't swim. Borneo is the first season in Survivor, and even from its inception, proved you can be a master of a profession and still be a victim of complete stupidity to the Survivor gods. In this challenge, Kelly and Jervis had to row a boat out to contestants shipwrecked and floating in the water, gathering them onto their boat where they could then row. When we saw the matchup was Jervis versus Kelly, everyone expected it was a done deal. As Kelly said, she was a water all-star and it was her element, whereas Jervis only had a terrified look. Now, to justify this expression, Jeff did only reveal before the challenge because of the stormy water they may capsize, which may have worried Jervis, as instead of saving his 5 shipwrecked teammates, he instead may end up shipwrecked with them. But shockingly, Jervis put Kelly to shame, covering about twice the distance of her. In fact, it wasn't until Kelly began getting others in her boat that they actually managed to keep up with Jervis. I think this whole situation can be summed up by the Taggy tribe at the end of the challenge, soulless and out at sea, treading water, with Wigglesworth collapsing into her boat. But on the topic of collapsing, at number 1 we have Crystal Cox, former 400x400 track and field gold medal athlete, who performed so bad at challenges, she literally had a montage dunking at her in the Gabon reunion. Now, former or current athletes have appeared on Survivor who haven't won challenges, which is fine, and Crystal is in this category. However, Crystal's performances were so awful, it had to be included in this video. Much like her career, she accomplished many achievements on Survivor, like the shortest amount of time to compete in a challenge, as well as the most attempts to escape from an immunity challenge. Worst of all, and the challenge we'll be focusing on most in this video, is her performance from the opening. Back when Survivor wasn't eternally in Fiji, they'd use the environment sometimes in challenges, and Gabon is a great season to exemplify this. The opening challenge was a short run, then climb up a massive hill, where the first from each tribe to finish would win individual immunity. While running on a track is flat ground, I'm assuming during training you as a runner would be going over some hills. So it was a bit shocking seeing Crystal not come first for her tribe, or be the first female in her tribe, or the second. I think you can tell where I'm going with this. Instead, Crystal stalled on the hill and constantly fell flat on her face. It eventually resulted in both Matty and Charlie having to assist her in the climb. But as the cherry on top of her per challenge performance, she is beaten by Jillian, who is renowned as one of the weakest contestants to ever participate on the show. Crystal pulled a prehistoric Debbie, blaming her dress and her per 10-pound shoes, but no excuses could hide the objective fact that she was beaten by a 61-year-old. But thanks for watching, everyone, I really appreciate it. A massive shout out to Isaac Lily White for this comment on my community poll about James Miller that actually inspired this video. Moreover, drop a sub if you enjoyed it, because as a small creator it really is appreciated. If you like this video and want to check out more content on the channel, here's a similar video where I talk about the saddest eliminations in Survivor. Nonetheless, have a great day, and peace!